Hi, everybody. It's Alexander and Kara here for another comics chat. This month's installment coincides with Women's History Month. So we've got, I picked kids' comics, and I know that Kara picked some good superhero comics. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and let her start. That is a heck of a panel to switch right to.
Yes, this is really, well, I'll start and say, obviously, this first one is on Wonder Woman. And this is the first volume of the most recent comic arc for Wonder Woman. And one of the things I love about this one specifically is that it seems that she's just always in a power pose. So this is a really great page right here just to show the art that's in it. This story starts actually with Ares. He's in prison on Themyscira, and he basically escapes by dying and throws Themyscira into sort of like this. They don't know whether it's like in existence still or not. So it could be gone. They don't really know. It might have like some existential crisis going on there. And as this happens, a lot of figures from Greek mythology, like Ares, get sent out into the real world of man. So Ares starts causing trouble, but he says he's reformed and that he's not, basically, his passion isn't war anymore, it's justice. But he is kind of going about it in his same old way, he just doesn't realize it. So he and Wonder Woman go head to head. At the same time, um, Steve Trevor is missing in action and she's trying to find him and save him. So Steve Trevor is a damsel in distress in this issue, which is really great. And this is also a great page for sort of like the crux of the story where he says, "You can't lie to me. Tell me," she says, "Tell me why you're really here, God of War." And he says, "I haven't told you a single lie. These people supported the government. They stood by as their own neighbors were persecuted and debased. I have only done as you would have done in my place." And then it's sort of, again, like sort of this existential crisis for her where she has to say, am I really like him? And what do I stand for, really? Which I like because a lot of times when Wonder Woman appears, she's sort of like the most powerful person in the room, and she doesn't have a lot of like questions about herself. Um,
He also comes with quite a lot of righteous certainty because, I mean, it's kind of the Superman problem and even the Captain America problem is how do you make it interesting when they're right pretty much all
exactly.
the time.
Exactly. So standing against Ares kinds of puts her on a little more even ground than with some of her other villains because he's a god. He's just as strong as she is in different ways, and she meets some other figures from Greek mythology in this volume as well, including not Artemis, Aphrodite. And so I really like the inclusion of Greek mythology and exploring sort of her roots as well. And then there's also sort of this feeling of being lost because not now it's not just that she can't go back to Themyscira, she doesn't know if it's even there. So this is a really good issue if you want to start with Wonder Woman, but you don't want to go back and read like every single Wonder Woman that was ever written.
Does Athena show up to contest that the god of justice?
They talk about Athena. I think they say um, they have a question about something, and they say, "Well, Athena would be the person to ask about that." And so maybe we'll see some more figures from Greek mythology as the series goes on.
Those of you playing Hades right now, if you just need a little break to read something, get
This
that.
is it. Yes.
Right. And so my book, it's a series so far. There's two books. It's by Hope Larson, and it's the first one is All Summer Long. Second one is All Together Now, and it follows Bina, short for Sabina. What I like is it's a given circumstance. It's not even a story about like, ooh, a girl that plays guitar. It's just her having a weird summer in this one. Kind of just like her best friend goes to a soccer camp. She's like, who am I supposed to be friends with? And kind of like making friends with older kids and being completely unsure of oneself at that age. And then this one, it starts off with her in a band, and then it gets into band drama because it's what happens if your keyboardist and drummer start dating and then kick you out. But the panel right here, this is one of my favorite panels. It's anytime somebody gets to use the graphic novel format for fun, I really enjoy it. And this is her, Charlie, her best friend's older sister, takes her to a party where it turns out her former band is playing. They changed their name from the Candids to AC Darcy, and they play her song. They stole her song. And so she unplugs it and causes a scene. And this is her then venting at the end of the night. And I like the cat with the airplane ears, but it's some good stuff. It's a modern coming of age tale, but what I like is how, like, comparing it to some of the old coming of age tales from even like 20 years ago, even going back to Judy Blume, there's a whole lot of, is a girl supposed to be doing these things type of thought of like, in this one, it doesn't even come into question that a girl can't be a songwriter. And instead it just goes right into her crisis over, are her songs any good? Does it fit the style of the band that she's in? Like, completely normalizes some of the stuff. And I really appreciate that. Instead, it focuses, like, it just establishes she's good at what she does. She's just trying to find the right sound
That's great.
for her band.
Also,
Yep.
for anyone who's like into music, that's great.
Yep. She's got a really sweet Telecaster. She even goes on a Joshua Tree spiritual kind of escape at one point, which is pretty much par for the course for LA musicians. So really recommend this stuff. Hope Larson, her is really stinking good at most things. She did the Wrinkle in Time graphic novel adaptation too. You might know her from that. But yeah, love these two.
Great. Okay. The next one we're going to talk about is Thor. Alexander is excited.
I love comics.
Yes. I will start by confessing that I haven't really read any of the Thors leading up to this, or a lot of them that come after this, but I did read the small arc. Basically, the idea here is that Thor has lost his worthiness. In a previous battle, Nick Fury whispered something in his ear that made him drop his hammer, and he hasn't been able to pick it up again. So the hammer chooses a new host, and it's this woman here who we don't know who she is in this volume, so I'm not going to say, although it's revealed in the next one, and you might be able to guess who it is.
We're not going to spoil it.
We're not going to spoil it, but if you know anything about maybe Marvel's plans, then you might be able to guess. So basically, a lot of this revolves around like the worthiness of the new host, especially because going from Thor, a male god, to a female host, and they talk about her worthiness, but then also she's known just as Thor. There's no feminization of her name whatsoever. They some of the villains call her Lady Thor, and I think she like beats them up for that. And and then she does face Thor. So Thor, the original Thor, is still a big part of the story, especially because he's battling with the fact that he's lost his worthiness. And they go head to head at one point, but reconcile and decide to become allies against their enemies. So it's just a great one for talking about gender roles. Also in this Freya, Thor's mother, she plays a major role in defending Asgard, and then his father kind of falls into this more like traditional um, macho type role where he's kind of like still living in the past with his ideas and his philosophies. So again, this is a really interesting comic to talk about gender roles.
It's also a pretty classic Freya Odin story too, because that's kind of one of the conflicts of, at least in the mythology, is that Freya's coming from the witches in another realm and is coming into this marriage to kind of make peace, but is also like, you can't be an Asgardian about everything, Odin.
Yes, exactly. Um, exactly. And then you kind of see like where Thor fits into that, and then this new Thor fits into it as well. So that's all I'm gonna say about it. Definitely pick this one up. I'm not a huge Marvel reader, but this is one I really enjoyed, and as you can see, the artwork is just really beautiful. And um, and uh, and then this is probably a good jumping on point for a new if you're getting into Thor as well.
Don't sleep on, there's a gender swap Loki arc or two as well that are really good. All right, and then kind of a very similar story, another coming of age tale, Roller Girl by Victoria Jamieson. Uh, this is basically classic status at this point, but I felt like it's my duty to talk about it because it's one of my favorites. And the reason it's one of my favorites is because roller derby has the best names. Because it's the only time I can really approve of puns because you name yourself generally after a pun, but it's always like a, a like rad pun. It's never just like a basic one. It's got to be about how awesome you are. So like you'll see the players that Astrid is idolizing: Scald Eagle, the Blast Unicorn, Yoga Nabisari, Scrappy Go Lucky. Coincidentally, my wife, when she did roller derby, was Bellis Lugosi. Anyway, but this book, it follows Astrid, and it's kind of a story about like what happens when the friend you've had your whole life and you just start to drift apart based on interests and making new other friends, and like what happens if you want to get into something that's seen as kind of like a rough and ugly and punky thing when your friend just wants to do popular stuff. Like, do you abandon that friend, or do you just acknowledge we're going to take different paths? It doesn't change who we are as people. But one thing I like about Astrid is she doesn't even really have like, she has some good moments, but it doesn't really have like this big like climactic thing. It ends in kind of like, she does something really, really good at the end by accident. And I really like that, like, again, it even comes up in the previous series. Sometimes those life-changing moments, they aren't big, they aren't dramatic. It just kind of like you make one little thing and it unfolds in neat different ways. And sometimes all it takes is a small kindness or a little accident to change the course of something. Also, Astrid has a built-in awesome roller derby name. She can just immediately be Asteroid. Don't even have to try.
Yeah. I'll add here that I found this just with the whole the crux of friendship, like two girls going in opposite directions, to be super identifiable, even though like I was never, in roller derby or anything like that. I think that sort of like, again, the coming of age and that sort of like crux of what things that happen in middle school, it can be really identifiable for anyone.
Because when you're at that age, you're just even beginning to carve out an identity. So
Yeah.
pretty much anything you do, you feel like counts toward that, because you basically haven't learned long enough to understand like what you like isn't nearly as important as other parts of your identity, like
Right.
versus how you act in a group situation, things like that. But when you're young, it's life and death. It's the most important thing in the world, because what else do you got? You got school and your home life, and you're just figuring it out as you go.
Exactly.
And every so often a blocker comes up and knocks you over, but that blocker knocked you over and let the jammer through, and your team wins.
Very good segue.
Yeah. So those are our comics for Comic Chat.
I don't think we've decided what we're going to do next time.
Yeah, so it'll be a surprise.
Yes. Yeah.
So as always, guys, tell us what you've been reading. Tell us if there's anything that sticks out recently, and we'll see you next month.
All right. See ya.